Ladies and gentlemen, you are now entering the Decent Christian Talk podcast. Enjoy.
Decent Christian Talk, episode 114. Hey everybody, I'm Gabe Jones.
I'm Josiah Jones.
And this is a show by the fans.
For the fans.
And we've got a great show for you because we've got one of the greatest voices in history on the show today.
The leather throat himself.
From the legendary DC Talk fame, Kevin Max has returned.
The return of the singer.
Very, very, very nice. Kevin has been on the show a few times. He might be in the Decent Christian Talk podcast Hall of Fame as many times as he's been on the show.
Death Therapy might be rivaling him for appearances.
It's getting close. I mean, Kevin's been on the show more than Brendan has, so.
Well, that's just because we like Kevin more.
Or Nathaniel.
Well, who knows about that kid.
But anyway, before we kind of get into the show, we do want to let you guys know that our year-end podcast is coming up in a few weeks.
It is.
It's one of our favorite episodes of the year. It's probably my favorite episode of the year. We actually get to talk about what we like.
I know. I have in my notes a list for the top 10 albums. And there's more than 10 albums there, and I have some work to do.
You're going to have to work on that.
I do.
So this year, what I thought was we would each give our top 10 like we do. But before we do announce our number one respective albums,
Mm-hmm.
we can give some honorable mentions.
Okay. My biggest problem so far this year is some of my favorite music that's been released are just singles. And that's it.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, did they put out a full-length album to, like, accompany the single? No, I just have a single, and that's it.
Yeah.
No album to put on the list.
That's especially hard with hip-hop. It seems like there's more singles than albums, and that's been hard.
I think Audrey Assad did a song per month from when I was scrolling through the list. So I was like, she could have put out one album, but she put out a whole calendar instead.
Well, I say that because if you're not in the Decent Christian Talk podcast discussion page on Facebook, you need to get in there because we've been posting at least 2 albums a day for the last couple weeks. And we're going to continue to post those up until the release of our year-end episode. So maybe there's some albums that you've listened to and you want to go back and listen to them. Maybe there's some you missed. But there's a great conversation going on the podcast page. There's been at least 2 a day for the last couple of weeks, and some have 3 a day. But it's fun to go back and see what has been released, because for me, it gives me a chance to go back and listen, and then also go back and see what I missed.
My favorite thing about the year-end podcast is the next year, where I listen to all the stuff that I didn't listen to that was released this year. So some of the stuff that I've listened to this year came from last year's podcast.
Yeah. And we also, just so you guys know, we do release an annual Spotify playlist that goes kind of in hand with our year-end episode. So be looking out for that. It's coming soon. It's something that we're excited about. And again, get into the Decent Christian Talk podcast discussion page, just so you can get an idea of maybe your own top 10 list, and maybe you can give your own once ours is posted. And also, it's a fun little discussion.
Yeah, and you can submit your own ideas.
Yeah. So, before we head into the interview, we need to talk about our Patreon page, patreon.com/Decent Christian Talk. For as low as $1 a month, you can join our sponsorship page. And for your hard-earned dollars, which we appreciate, you get some fun things like for instance, bonus episodes. One of the things that we talk about in our bonus episodes is a throwback album. And this week, in honor of Kevin Max, we are choosing to talk about one of his former record label mates from the Forefront record label days, PAX 217. Their first album on Forefront Records turned 20 years this year. So we're going to be check your pulse. We're going to be checking your pulse and listening to that album and talking about it.
Yeah, I know this is definitely probably one of your favorite albums of all time. So I know you're really excited to talk about this.
It's definitely a fun album to go back and listen to. Yeah, I'm excited. So you want to check that out for as low as $1 a month. You can get our normal episodes early before anybody else, and you can also get our bonus episodes. And I don't know, maybe we'll release a bonus episode over the holidays.
Interesting.
For everybody to hear on the normal feed.
I like that.
Maybe we'll do that. All right. So Kevin Max. Are you a Maxist?
So
A Kevin Maxist?
Maxocist?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it's whatever you want to call it.
I used to be. I know they changed the name of the fiefdom. Is that still the fiefdom?
I think the fiefdom has returned.
Okay. See, I never know.
Yes.
I am.
It's hard to keep up with, but
Names change.
obviously, Kevin, growing up listening to music in the Christian world, there's not much of a better choice of voices. Growing up in the CCM world, there was Kevin Max and there was everybody else.
He definitely has his own very unique sound and such a strong voice.
Yeah.
And I think I realized it even more when he did Audio Adrenaline 2.0. And like some of the songs that he did live
Yeah.
versus, Mark Stewart had a good voice, but it definitely faded. But when Kevin Max came through with his very strong voice and sang some of Audio Adrenaline's old stuff, I was like, wow, like his voice can evolve to pretty much any style.
He is a chameleon, for sure. But speaking of that, he's got a new project coming out, a new band, rebranding, if you will, called Sad Astronauts. It's a band that he has partnered up with Eric Cole, who has done a lot of work with Kevin over the years. He played on the very first Kevin solo album, Stereotype B, and he's played on several other albums and projects of Kevin. But they've decided to team up and rebrand themselves as Sad Astronauts. So I'm excited for this, kind of get back into the rock and roll groove, and I'm excited to see what happens.
I am too. And people like Kevin are one of the reasons you started this podcast, where they don't get played on Christian radio very much. Kevin doesn't really get played on secular radio very much. There's a lot of really good music out there that just doesn't get the attention. And you've kind of been very good on this podcast at highlighting artists like Kevin that, how many albums does he put out now?
Oh, it's at least a dozen. I mean, it's a lot.
And he probably has a dozen more that didn't get put out. But so there's, if you're someone that has Caleb in your area or a band, like music like that, and you listen to that radio station, go listen to Kevin's catalog. And there's hundreds of songs that are very good. And I think you'll really enjoy it.
And if you listen to K-Love, check out some of the Spotify playlists that we release, because it's better than what you're listening to.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's just, there's a whole side of Christian music that a lot of people don't get to hear. And I think that, I don't know, I think we do our best to try to
and that's
highlight those people.
Definitely. And that's some of some of my favorite parts about doing this show is highlighting artists that make you think and make you, I don't know, just
feel and
yeah. I mean,
all kinds of
it's
stuff.
fun. I believe we do have a Kevin Max Spotify playlist that I might have to look into and see if I can add some things to it and re-release it.
We also have a best of Kevin Max episode
Oh yeah.
where we talk for
We just
and like an hour or
Yeah.
maybe longer.
It just released this past year. We talked about all of Kevin's catalog as a solo artist. So you'll want to go check that out as well. It's in the archives. It's actually, if you go back and look, it is episode 104. It released in March of this past year. So check that out.
And we have some people in that episode.
Yes, some people.
Some people.
But yeah, without further ado, here is our interview with Kevin Max.
All right, hit that horn, babe. Let's dance.
We are here with Kevin Max, who has been on our podcast at least once a year, and we just squeaked it in because we haven't had him on this year, and he's got a new project called Sad Astronauts. We had to talk to him about it because we haven't yet. So
You gotta squeak. You gotta talk to the squeaky wheel. You gotta squeak the squeaky wheel.
the squeaky wheel of the music universe joins us.
Yeah.
So tell us, man, what led you to doing a project? You've been doing solo for a while. What led you to start a new band, a new project, relabeled, remodeled, whatever you want to call it? Sad Astronauts.
Deconstructed. I'm sick to death of myself. So I thought, okay, well, the only way to get away from myself is to call myself another name and join a band that has nothing to do with anything that I've ever done before. But that's not true, because Eric Hull's played with me since 2001. He played on Stereotype. He wrote with me on Stereotype B. So he's been around with me for 2 decades. So I guess this is kind of, a similar thing, but in a way it's very different because he and I are 50-50 on this album. So he's writing the chords from the guitar. I'm writing the vocal melodies and lyrics, and it's been unbelievable so far.
What's that like for you, going back into that collaborative mode of working with somebody else after you've been kind of just doing it all your own for a while?
Oh my gosh, man. So satisfying, because when you are you're a solo artist, 9 times out of 10 you manage yourself too, regardless if you have a manager or if you have a publicist or if you've got a road manager. You end up making all the decisions, and it's so frustrating for me because I'm the least business-minded guy you'll ever meet in your life. So I don't care about any of that, and it just drove me insane. And so I find, after revisiting this Planet and Radio Technica, which basically revisiting was collaborative because I did that with John Painter, but Radio Technica I kind of did on my own, and except for 3K Static, obviously making the tracks. It's all to say it's so liberating just to be able to be a dumb blonde singer in a band, even though I'm no longer blonde because I've cut out all my highlights, and now I'm down to my natural color, which is a dishwater brown with no hints of gray though on my head. A lot of gray in my beard, no gray on my head, which is great. I do have a question for Joel and Brendan. It's a double question. If you were to grow out your hair on top of your head, what color would it be?
At this stage, mine.
What color would it be, or what color would we want it to be?
What color would it be?
Like a dark brown.
Yeah.
Mine would be a dark brown with
thing
through it.
Yeah. Boring.
But back to things
Stay
people care
bald.
about.
Stay bald.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. So one thing that maybe some of the listeners don't know, can you give us sort of a brief history of the relationship between you and Eric, how that whole thing came to be over the years? Because he's worked with you. You worked with him for a long time, but how did that all start?
Yeah, well, wow, you'd have to go back to about 1990, 98 or 99, the end of Supernatural. He was friends with Elena, who is my ex-wife. He was friends with her. He had been writing with her and her twin sister Audra on a project, and he started showing up at my house writing with her, and I just noticed how great of a songwriter he was. And I was working on Stereotype B at the time, literally just the very beginning phases, and I said, hey, you want to take a stab at one of these tunes with me? And we started writing together for Stereotype B. And man, the collaboration between Eric and I is really interesting. It's kind of like if we're in separate rooms, it doesn't happen. But if we're sitting next to each other and he's playing guitar stuff and I start singing on top of what he's doing, it's immediate. And so we just recognized really early on that we were really good at that kind of thing. I think it's because we have a lot of similar tastes in music, so that really helps. And then, of course, we became really great friends. I'm still really great friends with my ex, and so is he. So whenever she throws parties, we're both there. And Amanda shows up too. It's all a happy hang, So
That's awesome.
We're all still friends, which is amazing. Yeah, and Eric and I have been through a lot together. He went on the road with me early on with Stereotype B, on the road, and then off and on throughout my career, we've collaborated on different projects, and then he's kind of gone away and did his own thing. So it's kind of been back and forth for a while. And when I told him, after revisiting this planet, I'm done, man. I'm done making solo music for a while. I just need to take a break. He was like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, well, I'm going to start a band with you. He's like, oh, really? Are you? And we had a long chat about it, and we thought it was a cool idea. Who knows? Like, once we get out on the road again together, we might totally ditch the idea. But we've created an album already, as far as music goes, that is probably better than anything we've done yet. So,
and that's a pretty bold statement.
It's a bold. And a lot of artists say
work.
that they're like, the newest record is the best thing ever, and then it comes out and it's donkey do, We can really back this up. I can really back this up. So I think it's going to be hard though, because you don't want to show everybody the songs right away. So we have to kind of tease things out, and we're going to start in January with a Kickstarter and probably tease one song out initially before the Kickstarter, so people can hear it. It's not going to be the single. It's going to be more of a deep cut, But I can give the name of that song out now because we decided it, and it's called "In Space, No One Can Hear You Weep." Will be the first selection from Sad Astronauts. Yep.
Very cool.
I hope so.
You used the word deconstruct. That was the first word you used right out of the gate. And that's a word that a lot of people have used over the last few years. What does that look like for you, not only in the world of like leaving CCM, but also like there being a huge difference between what we believe and what maybe the evangelical world believes?
Yeah, I like to call it deconstruction, reconstruction, because you're always, any person that's really changing every day, which we do, you're going to deconstruct or you're going to reconstruct. So it's a combination of both of those things. I've been deconstructing for decades, I've never really, I've always been progressing, as you can say, and then sometimes I regress. But I think where I'm at right now is I've really just kind of gone on a journey to find out what I truly believe in by reading a lot, thinking a lot, keeping my eyes and ears open. I've definitely been pretty vocal about my thoughts online, and it's met with some people that just don't agree with me, which is great. But I've always told them, I said, I'm a believer, but I'm questioning a lot of things, and I've got more questions than answers, and that's reflected in my music, and I think it's always been reflected in my music from day one. And definitely Sad Astronauts is definitely on that plane of lyrical content as well. And so when Sad Astronauts comes out and starts, giving people these songs, they'll kind of hear a little bit about what I'm going through right now, which is great. I touched on it a little bit on Radio Technica, and obviously got bold on a couple of songs, and I had a lot of freedom in that. It was very liberating to do that, As a member of DC Talk, to write a song that's, Jesus, I love you, but your followers freak me out. That was great, because I meant it.
Listen, it makes me nervous when anybody is so black and white in their faith and not willing to recognize that. I guess maybe the word I'm looking for is absolute, because there are things that I think we should all question and investigate in our faith, to make sure that our faith is our own faith and not just what's been handed to us or passed down to us. So I get frustrated when people come after somebody who is deconstructing their faith, because I think that's a great place to be, that you're asking those questions and investigating what you believe and who you are. So what would you say to somebody who's going through that process?
I would just suggest that they continue to be open to learning and to changing and to progressing. And when you give into the fear of like, oh my gosh, I'm asking questions, or oh man, I don't know if I believe in this anymore. I mean, you're giving into the same fear that kept us from progressing as people for so long. It's been the totalitarian fear that's constant, in my opinion, in a lot of evangelical churches, have made people regress over time. And I feel like anybody out there going through it, they should just embrace it. And if they're a believer, they should have these deep conversations with the God they believe in, and really struggle with it, talk to him about it. I believe in a God of the universe, and I believe that he can hear me, and that in itself is just plain kind of crazy. But if I believe that, then I truly believe that he cares about my progression and asking questions and wanting to know, what is real and what isn't real, and I don't think the God that I believe in is going to, just all of a sudden ignore me because I don't believe every single thing that's written down somewhere,
Would you say that this theme of deconstructing parallels the theme for the Sad Astronauts debut?
Yes and no. I mean, Sad Astronauts is really, again, it's a 50-50 thing. It's Eric and I, and so we kind of we go over my lyrics. I'm the main lyric writer, but there are times that Eric goes, I'm not sure about that line. Let's change that. And there's a lot of songs on here that have just nothing to do with theology or politics, or they're just these really kind of cool abstract songs that are coming from the subconscious, and I think that we don't want to mess with that. We think that's what's interesting, about music. I mean, for me, I've always been a huge fan of somebody like Bob Dylan that just kind of spits it out and doesn't go back over his work and contextualize everything and edit everything, you know? So Sad Astronauts is definitely very different from something you've heard from me, in the fact that it's two different guys, and but it is also similar. There's obviously going to be similarities too. So I don't know, until it's out there, you know, it's just kind of like, I really can't talk about it until it's there and everybody can get to hear it and go, okay, we love it, we hate it, whatever, you know.
So that's a good little preview of like the content of Sad Astronauts. What about the actual music, the genre? Like, how would you describe it? Kevin Max has been all over the place when it comes to genres. How would you describe Sad Astronauts?
Definitely rock and roll. I mean, Eric and I started in rock and roll, and, you know, Stereotype B, a lot of people could say that's not a rock and roll record, because, you know, there was a lot of stuff going on in that record, from Adrian Belew to Mark Townsend, the keyboardist, to, you know, my idea of wanting to be like Peter Gabriel for a moment or something. There was just so much stuff going on in my head at that moment. Sad Astronauts is definitely more of a lean, mean rock and roll machine with kind of indie alternative leanings, maybe a little bit of shoegaze too. But it's guitar oriented, it's guitar music. So it's starting from the guitar. So everything that we do is guitar based. And that definitely takes it into a specific direction, because when I write my music, I'm writing from a keyboard, you know. I mean, everything from Romeo Drive to, you know, even AWOL, the stuff that I wrote by myself was coming from a keyboard. So it always changes the feel of it when you're writing from a guitar.
You talked about your Kickstarter coming out in January. What are some things that we can look forward to with that?
That's a big mystery, because I'm not really big. I don't really know much about how Kickstarters are put together, because I was on Pledge Music for so long. But I know that we are recording in January a possible acoustic version of the album, and then we go in to actually do the full band recording in February, March. And so I think we're going to start the Kickstarter probably early January, mid-January, and people will be able to hear at least one song. It's going to be kind of the teaser song, which I told you about, In Space, No One Can Hear You Weep. It's kind of like the anthem for the record, but stylistically, it's not going to be what the whole album is going to sound like. So I think once we start recording, we're going to take a lot of video of us recording in studio. We're going to, you know, release little things here and there for people to hear some of the songs. Obviously, we're raising money to make the record, but you know, we're open to merchandise and vinyl and things like that. But for Eric and I, we want to just make the best album we can and look at touring when it's possible. Right now we have 15 songs that we're happy with, so I mean, that's kind of like a double album, and we joked about how, you know, absolutely pretentious it would be to do a debut record double album, you know. So
I'd buy it.
Yeah, I'm honestly just super excited to let everybody hear this, because it's honestly that good. If I didn't think it was that great, I wouldn't be talking about it. We wouldn't be doing interviews. We wouldn't even be doing a Kickstarter, because I you know, last two records I didn't do Kickstarters because I had no idea what they're going to turn out like. And in fact, Radio Technica still makes me cringe a little bit.
Hey, Kevin, if you don't want to or you don't know, that's fine. But who are some of the other players going to be on this album, or is it just going to be you and two others?
Great question. We don't know yet. I mean, right now it's just Eric and I, but we have an idea of who we want to play bass and drums, and it's a couple of guys that have been in a band with Eric before, and have played with me live here and there. But they're out of state. One guy's in Seattle and one guy's in California. So it's really hard to make that connection yet, you know? Because when it comes to touring, yeah, we can still do it together. I mean, we fly in wherever we're going to be, and it doesn't matter that everybody's not in Nashville. In fact, we actually prefer that. So we're just kind of working through that right now. But I mean, what's coming out as Sad Astronauts is going to be Eric and I, as far as I know right now, you know.
I think the question burning on a lot of people's minds, Kevin, is the name. Where did it come from? Is there some deep hidden backstory to it, or was it like, this is a cool band name, let's run with it?
It's really simple. It's Eric's publishing name. So his publishing name, his songwriting publishing was called Sad Astronaut. And we were going through a lot of different name ideas. A lot of them were really funny. I was being really stupid and being funny and never gave him anything really serious. And then when I started giving him serious names, he was like, oh my gosh, no, that sounds like prog rock or something. And so I said, well, what about just using your, you know, Sad Astronaut or Blind Thieves or something like that? And I said, you know, Sad Astronaut's great. Let's just go with it, you know? And so now we're kind of married to it, right? It is what it is. It's like a band name shouldn't be everything, you know? If you think about the Beatles, like that was a cool name, but was it?
Right.
Right. I mean, you know, last year's Model, that's a cool band name.
I think so.
I'm being honest, that's a really cool band name. Sad Astronauts, you know, we've already had a few people pushing back on that. Like, what does that mean? Are you guys sad? And you know, I'm like, yeah, I'm devastatingly sad right now. I'm you know, absolutely, I want to leave this planet. Therein lies the anthem, you know. So.
Well, we got through about 30 minutes and no DC Talk questions. How'd we do?
Wow, that's impressive. Especially considering the crowd right here. That's impressive. No, I'll answer anything, man. I'm like, as you guys know, first of all, I was very happy to see, you know, Joel start this website. I told him, and I told Brendan too, I'm just not going to be online as much anymore. I'm taking a break. I want to, you know, I want time for my family, and I felt myself just spending way too much time answering people's stinking DMs all the time, and, you know, constantly having to come on to talk, and you know, it was just taking up way too much of my time. It was giving me too much anxiety, and I was like, you know, this isn't right. It's not real. And then I watched that program, of course, about how, you know, the internet's been spying on us for years, and it's probably taking our very souls just by doing this podcast, you know. So I just decided to pull away from all that for a little bit, and it's been amazing so far. But I still am excited about DC Talk. People talking about the 25th anniversary. It's surreal for me because I'm so far from where that was, but I can still look back at it and go, wow, we did some really interesting things in the industry, you know. And especially the Jesus Freak record. It was just so amazing what was accomplished with that one little album. And we had no clue about it when we went into it. So, you know.
What's that been like for you, Kevin, seeing, you know, the main DC Talk page has been just flooding us with all of these photos and stories and quotes. I'm not sure how much of it you've been following along with, but is there much of that just really sort of hits for you with the nostalgia factor? Is it more of an eye roll thing, or if you could sum up just your feelings on in 2020, the reaction to people still on board with this thing?
I mean, there's no eye rolling unless somebody plays, a really, like, I love rap music or something. And then I'm like, it takes me right back to it, and I'm like, oh, wow, why did you decide to put that one up? I'm quite proud of anything, on the Jesus Freak record, obviously. And to see what we were what we were saying back then was kind of interesting, because I can see the young man trying to figure out what to say and not really having, not really knowing what to say, and just coming up with these little lines about, what this project was going to be. It's not cringy. It's just like looking at myself as somebody in his early 30s, or late 20s, just trying to figure it all out. And I was always the oddball misfit in that group, and it was cool to see, how the three of us worked together back then. We it really was interesting. You've got three completely different individual musicians, and their styles and where they came from is completely different and independent of each other. But then when we got together in that space, some really cool things happened, And so, yeah, I was excited. I mean, I didn't get the Christmas ornaments, just being completely transparent. But I got everything else. I mean, the box set I think it looks great. I saw today somebody had their vinyl smashed or something. They got a broken vinyl in the mail or something.
But
and
they're already fixing that issue though. But that's cool.
But that happens. I mean, I sent out, I don't know how many vinyls of Broken Temples. The first time I did crowdfund, and a few of those went overseas, and people said that they were broken or bent or whatever. It's vinyl. It's tough. It's going to happen. But hey, T-shirts will be okay, right?
Before we let you go, just a real quick, well-deserved congratulations on revisiting this planet. Spectacular,
Thank you, bro.
Spectacular freaking album.
Man,
very, very
we
good.
just, John Painter was like the dude on that. Like, I mean, I told him what I wanted it to sound like, of course, but and I produced a little bit, but John Painter, he played everything on that record. It's like he's just a nut. He's so good. So, I mean, the congratulations really goes to him, and then Mike Norman for helping me through it and giving me advice and stuff during the whole thing. I had major anxiety about doing this record, by the way, just so you know. After it was all said and done, yeah, I'm extremely proud of it. So thanks, Joel. Appreciate that.
Well, man, thanks for your time. I appreciate it. I hope your family has a good holiday.
Thank you, man. It is literally so. This year has been amazing because I'm not on the road and I'm with my family, and it's been amazing to see, them every day, literally. Thanks for doing this, and thanks for still talking about my crazy music, Gabe.
That was our interview with Kevin Max. I'd like to thank Kevin and Joel and Brendan for helping me out with that. It's always fun to talk to somebody that's been a veteran of the music industry, and a lot of people that has been in Kevin's shoes would, there's a lot of jaded feelings towards the music industry, not even the Christian music industry, the music industry as a whole. And we've seen a lot of artists just kind of give up, quit. Because maybe they're just not into it. Maybe they just don't feel like it's worth it anymore. Kevin continues to evolve and repackage himself, much like Chris Jericho or someone like that, if you will. They continue to put out music that challenges themselves as well as the listener.
I think a big help to that is Kevin has definitely found a very, very loyal, vocal, outspoken fan base. And I mentioned the fiefdom earlier. Whatever it's going by now, whatever name the Kevin Max followers are going by, they will let you know, and they're probably listening to me. Shout out to you guys, because like Gabe said, if it weren't for you, Kevin would probably just sing to himself in a garage somewhere and have just as much fun.
And you know, with Kevin, yeah, you're right about the loyal listeners, but I'm hoping that this new project, Sat Astronauts, I'm hoping that he finds listeners that's never heard him before, never heard him in DC Talk, never heard him in the solo world. I think this has a chance to, I don't know, give him a new audience.
There's people that still think he's an Audio Adrenaline.
Yeah. The internet is a fun place sometimes. But yeah, I am excited about this. Be looking out for that Kickstarter that's going to be coming out in early 2021. And it's always exciting to hear from artists that have a long career, but have also continued to, I don't know, not just kind of stay in their own lane. They kind of want to explore a little bit. And I feel like that's what Kevin's doing here.
Kevin has a very different, like we talked about, he has at least a dozen albums, probably more, but every one of them has a different sound. Yeah. And it's just his nature to experiment and to find the perfect answer that he's never going to find. Like, I feel bad. He's looking for the answer to the question, but he doesn't know the question.
He's like Mark Wahlberg and the other guys. He's a peacock. You got to let him fly.
He's a beautiful peacock. And I feel like
he might never talk to me again after that.
If Kevin Max ever put out the perfect album, he would go to sleep like satisfied and wake up the next day and think, gosh, I could put out a better album.
Yep. You're right.
Or he would just completely change and, I don't know, try hip hop or EDM or become a DJ, put a marshmallow on his head.
An emoji.
Yeah, something. Kevin will always find something to explore.
So yeah, thanks for sticking with us. We are excited about our best of episode coming up in the coming weeks. Make sure you subscribe to wherever you listen to your podcast, whether that's Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts. We're on all those podcast worlds. And we would love if you would hit the subscribe button. And also, check us out on Facebook, like I mentioned before, the podcast discussion page. We also have a Twitter, DC Talk Act 2, Instagram, DC Talk Podcast, and of course we have a website, decentchristiantalk.com. And if you'd like to join our team, we're at patreon.com/decentchristiantalk. And in this week's bonus episode, we'll be talking about the self-titled debut of PAX 217, celebrating 20 years of that album. I'm excited to talk about that.
You say we're probably going to open the floodgates
and let the people in?
On the bonus episode.
Yeah, okay. Sounds like a plan. All right, guys, we will catch you next time for the best of 2020 episode. Until then, we'll catch you next time.
And don't forget to tip your waiters and waitresses. Thanks.
Don't forget to tip your waiters and waitresses. Thanks.